Inflation, causes and effects. Inflation occurs when the amount of money in circulation in the economy increases significantly without being offset by an increase in the production of goods and services produced. This causes the price of goods and services to increase, and the purchasing power of money to decrease. There are several factors that cause inflation, including 1. High aggregate demand. When aggregate demand increases beyond production, then the price of goods and services also tends to increase, thus triggering inflation. 2. Delayed price adjustments. Sometimes manufacturers and sellers delay adjusting their prices to cover rising production costs. However, when the price is finally adjusted, it can trigger inflation. 3. Rising production costs. Rising production costs such as raw materials, labor, and energy can trigger inflation as producers tend to raise prices for goods and services to cover higher production costs. 4. Rising prices of imported goods. When the price of imported goods rises, the prices of domestic goods and services also tend to increase, thus triggering inflation. 5. Raising wages. If wages go up without corresponding productivity increases, then production costs also tend to go up, so producers tend to raise prices for goods and services to cover higher costs. 6. Loose monetary policy. If the monetary authority prints too much money and lends money at a low interest rate, then the amount of money circulating in society increases, thereby triggering inflation. 7. Property price increases. Rising property prices such as land, houses, or buildings can trigger inflation because they can affect the prices of goods and services produced around the property. 8. Changes in inflation expectations. If people expect inflation to increase in the future, then they tend to raise prices and lower the value of the money they hold, thus triggering inflation. Various aspects related to inflation, such as 1. Monetary and fiscal policy. Contributors consider the role of monetary and fiscal policies in controlling inflation. They analyze the central bank's policy of setting interest rates and money supply, as well as the government's fiscal policy on spending and revenue. 2. Technological developments. Contributors also consider the influence of technological developments on inflation, such as production efficiency, changes in consumer behavior, and increased market openness. 3. Socio-political conditions. Contributors observe the impact of socio-political factors on inflation, such as political stability, regulatory changes, investment uncertainty, and social injustice. 4. Global factors. Contributors consider the influence of global factors on inflation, such as fluctuations in commodity prices, changes in exchange rates, and interactions between countries. Inflation has a far-reaching impact on various sectors of the economy. Here are some of the impacts of inflation on specific sectors identified by contributors. Financial sector. Inflation can affect the interest rate and value of financial assets. High interest rates can reduce demand for credit and hinder economic growth. In addition, the value of financial assets such as bonds may decrease due to the reduced value of money due to inflation. Labor market. Inflation can affect the labor market by affecting the unemployment rate and wages. If inflation is high, the unemployment rate may increase because companies tend to prefer reducing production rather than raising product prices. In addition, inflation can also affect the level of wages because an increase in the price of goods and services can lead to a decrease in purchasing power. Wealth distribution. Inflation can exacerbate the inequality of wealth distribution in society. People who own valuable assets such as land and property can make a profit because the price of those assets rises along with inflation, while people who do not own those assets tend to be hit harder by rising prices of goods and services. Poverty rate. Inflation can worsen the poverty rate in society, especially for those with low incomes. Rising prices for goods and services can reduce the purchasing power of low-income people and worsen conditions of poverty. Monetary and fiscal policies are the two main tools used by the government to tackle inflation. Monetary policy deals with the regulation of the amount of money in circulation in the economy and the interest rate by the central bank of a country. The central bank can raise interest rates to reduce the amount of money in circulation and reduce inflation, or lower interest rates to increase the amount of money in circulation and promote economic growth. Monetary policy can also be carried out through open market operations, that is, the purchase or sale of securities by the central bank in order to regulate the amount of money circulating in the market. Meanwhile, fiscal policy is related to regulating government spending and revenue. The government can raise taxes or reduce spending to reduce aggregate demand and reduce inflation. However, strict fiscal policy can also lead to a decline in economic growth and a higher unemployment rate. These two policies can work together or complement each other in controlling inflation. However, the right policy must be adapted to the prevailing economic and political conditions in each country.